Hey everybody, welcome back to Mind Over Modo. This is the fourth part in the Crash Course Introduction to Scripting in Modo series. Today we're going to be looking at manipulating item channels and adding arguments to our script. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a pretty basic scene here with several cubes scattered throughout the scene. And let's say I need to take all of these and align them on the y-axis with 2 meters in between them. I'm going to start where we left off with the script in the last episode. In this script, we were getting the item name and changing it. So we can get rid of a lot of that code because that's not what we're going to be doing here. So I'll just go ahead and start by deleting that. I've already saved it as a new name. I'm going to call it item move. And now we can start putting together the command to manipulate the item's channels. In this case, we're going to need to look at the position channels. Now, if we go back over to Modo, we can start out by just trying to do in the app what we want to do with the script. So I know I'm going to want to move an item. So I'll just grab this cube here and let's just move it in the Y position because I know that's going to be part of what I want the script to do. If we look over here in the undo list, we can see that we have a command that got fired, and that's a really good way to start working on breaking down scripts and solving problems that way, is just to see what the app does when you're working inside of it. So the next thing I'm going to try is deselecting everything and seeing if I can fire this command again and get it to work. So I'll double click on that and we get this alert that says command disabled. So it's not working exactly how I need to on its own. It only works if I have this item selected, and then I can double click on it and it fires. And we can see over here we're at 10 millimeters. So I'm going to look in the commands tab and try to look up that transform channel command. I'm going to hit F for find. You can see I've already searched for it here. Transform comes up. And here's that transform channel command. If I expand that, I can see down here that there are 4 arguments. You can see I've already expanded it. But one of those arguments is item, the item to which the channel belongs. And if we look at the way the channel was fired here, we can see that the item is not one of the arguments listed. Also, the mode is not listed. So we can start there and see if there's a way to add those arguments and get this command to do what we need it to. Now here's another trick that I like a lot in Modo. When you click on an item here in the undo list, it shows you right over here, select sub item mesh 021. That is the internal ID of the item. So we can use that as the ID argument, and we can use set as the mode. That just means that we're setting the position absolutely to this amount here, as opposed to we could add this amount to the existing position. And there may even be something else here. I'm not sure. Let's see if we go to mode, look, set, shift, and scale. So I think shift is would be like adding to it, and scale would be actually multiplying that times a number. But we're just concerned with setting it to an absolute amount for this. So we'll go with set, and we'll try this again. We're going to type in a new amount just to make sure that we're doing this right. I'll just say 0.5. Type in set, and then we'll type in mesh 021 and hit return. Okay, and you can see right over here, the position Y got changed to 500 millimeters, which is 0.5 meters, which is what we typed in here. All the cubes moved up because they're all children of that cube. We can just set that back to 0 for now. But we can see that now we have a command that's working on its own, and we can start to take this into our script. And as a side note, I'll just say that this is a really powerful command because it allows us to get to any channel if we know its name, if we know how it's referred to in the app, and the item that it belongs to. So whether it's selected or not selected, if our script knows those two things, we can manipulate that channel. And so that allows us a lot of flexibility in our scripts. So let's go ahead and take that command back into our script. Just pasted it in there as a placeholder so I have it. And now we can start to figure out how we want to build our script to use that command. Now, since this command needs the ID of the item we want to manipulate, we know that we're going to have to query that in a similar way to what we did in the last script. But the last script that we had, we were getting the type and we were getting the name. We weren't getting the ID, so we need to go ahead and set that up now. So I can start and say item ID lx.eval. Now we're going to need that query scene service just like before. Item. And then if we go over to the scripting and commands PDF and we're down in the items section, we can look through here and see that there is an item ID query that we can fire off in the script. So go back over here, hide that, go back over here and say item.id, and then we need the question mark, %S, and then outside of the quotes, %item, which will insert this variable right where the %S is. And this variable we're getting from the array that we created up here, which gets all the selected items. Now we can go ahead and get rid of these other two. We're not going to need the name or the type for this script, so I'll just delete that. And I'll also start building this command because we're going to have to put this in an lx.eval wrapper, so to speak. And we're going to need that % here as well. But instead of item, we're going to put item ID. And then that will go right here. So %S. Now, if you remember from the last one, we can have two of these %S placeholders in here. And we're going to need that as well because we need to put in the amount that we want to set the Y position to. So the way that works is we do %, another open parentheses, another close parentheses, and then we put our two arguments in the order that they appear. So the first one will be the Y amount. So we need to create a variable for that. I'm just going to call that Y pause for Y position. And I'm going to create that up here before we start the loop. Say Y pause equals 0 because we want to start our cubes at 0 and then we want to go up from there. The other argument I need is the amount that I want to offset each cube. So I'm going to create a variable for that called Y offset. And we wanted that to be 2 meters. So I'm going to set that to 2. Now, the other thing we need to do in this loop is we need to change Y position, Y pause variable to be 2 meters more or 2 units more than it was the last time we go through the loop. So the way that we can do that is say Y pause plus equals Y offset. Offset. And if you don't know already, that will essentially be the same as saying y pause equals y pause plus y offset. It's just a little cleaner way of doing it. So now every time we go through the loop, we're going to add 2 to y pause, and then when we come back through here, we'll be putting that into the amount that we want. The other thing that we want to do, if it's going to be in a straight line, is we're going to have to affect one of the other channels, at least one, maybe two. Turns out the way that I have these scattered, it's all along the X and Y. So we'll just work with those two for now. If I go back to the script, there we go. I'm going to just copy this line. And we'll put that first just to kind of keep those two things close together. And you can probably guess that this is going to be pause X. And I still need the item ID, but I don't need another variable. So I can do it like that without the parentheses. And because we're going to set that manually, and it's going to be 0 because we want these to be in a vertical stack. So X is going to be 0 and Y is going to be changed. I'm going to save that. And let's just see what we got here. I'm going to go back to Modo. Type in @item move.py. Before I fire it, I'm going to go back and select all of these because that's one of the parts of the script is it was getting all the selected items to operate on. And one neat thing about Modo is if you double click the parent of a parent children group there, it selects everything. So that's a fast way to do that. Let's fire the script now and see what it does. All right, it looks like it worked. That's great. We can see that all of those cubes have moved back to X0, and then there's been an offset, a regular offset for each one along the Y-axis. And I think, just because of the way selection works, yeah, those are actually in order. So that can be kind of a helpful thing as well. So now we have the basics of our script working. Now we're going to look at how to set up our script to capture arguments that we send along with our command when we fire it from Modo. And in this example, we're going to make that argument drive this Y offset variable. So we can basically make that dynamic and decide what we want this number to be when we fire the script in Modo. So the way that we do that is we make another variable. I'm just going to call it args. And we assign it to this command, lx.args. And this command grabs all the arguments that get sent along with the command, and it captures them in the form of an array. And in this case, we're assigning it to this variable called args. So the way that we assign this to Y offset is we come down here, and we're going to say args, and since it's an array, then we need to decide which item in the array we want to access. In this case, it's going to be the first one, and arrays start at number 0. So we're going to type in 0, and this should assign the contents of the first item in the array to the Y offset variable. The only thing we need to watch out for here is that these arguments come in as strings, as text. And we're trying to pass numeric values here for this Y position, or the Y offset actually, but it still needs to be a number to make the Y position calculate correctly. So the way that we can convert that is with a function, and it looks like this. We type in float and then put arg0 in parentheses, and this converts the string to a float number, which means it can access decimal point values, and that will work good for what we need. So let's go ahead and see if this works. I'm going to go back into Modo. Just going to frame these up a little bit. I'm going to type in our command @item move.py. And the way we send an argument is we just type in a space after the name of the command, and then we just type in the argument that we're trying to send, whether it's a number or a string or what have you. So in this case, I'm going to type in 5. And last time we used 2, so hopefully this will be a noticeable difference. Let's see what happens here. Okay. So there's a error with this. I had this come up before when I was trying to make this work, and I found out what the problem was. The problem is that right now we only have one item selected. And if we go over to our script, this for loop is trying to treat this variable selected items as an array and loop through that array. But if there's only one item selected, this command just returns one item. It doesn't return an array. So there is a way in Modo to basically fix this and to force this command to return an array and not just a single item. And the way you do that is that you change this from lx.eval to lx.evalin. Now, let's see if that works. Go back into Modo. Let's fire this command. Okay, and we can see that it worked just fine. Our cube didn't change, but that's because we're starting out at position y0. And this cube, I think either was at 0 or really close, so we didn't really see anything. I'm going to hit undo. Yeah, it was already there. So let's go ahead and double click to select all of them and try this again. All right, so that's working, and we can see that those are going a certain distance, and we typed in 5, so that's going to be 5 meters. Let's undo that and just type in a different number just so we can kind of see that real quickly that that's working. I'm just going to type in 1, and there you can see the difference. So we know that this argument is working now. And that makes this command a lot more flexible for us when we're working in Modo. So the last thing I want to show is a way for us to test and see if we have sent an argument with the command or not. Because right now, if we were to send the command without an argument, we would get an error message when the script tries to execute this line. So we want to put in a test to see if we've sent an argument or not, and then if we have, we want to basically execute these lines, and if we haven't, then we don't. So let's see how to do that. Start by using a command called try in Python, and when we have these commands with a colon like that, we need to indent, and I want to try to see if there's any arguments, and then if there are arguments, I want to assign the y offset to the first argument that is sent. If there aren't any arguments, what I do is I put this except line in there, and if there aren't any offsets, I'm just going to set offset to the number 2 as a default value. So let's save that and go back into Modo and sort of reset the scene there. Now, let's launch this command without an argument and see what happens. Okay, so it's worked, and if we go over here and click through here, we can see we have 0, 2 meters, 4 meters. So it's working and using just this default 2 in the offset. Now, if we go over here and hit undo for a little bit, reset that. Now let's try 6 for something new, and we click that, and it looks like it works. Those are further apart, and we click here, we have 0, and 2 is at 6, and 3 is at 12. So now we've put in a little bit more of a way to make sure it works even if we don't have that argument in place. So that covers what we set out to do in this lesson. And I think that about finishes up our crash course introduction to scripting in Modo series. We've basically covered the foundations of where to put your script, how to start looking up commands, and getting item information from the scene, and then piping it back into the scene to make changes and then affect item channels, and also send arguments with our script. So this is just hopefully a good foundation for you to get started, and I hope that this has been helpful and that you've enjoyed the series. Please leave any comments or questions in the comments section of this video. Also, like this video if it's been helpful, and subscribe if you want to get more videos. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next lesson.